Morning, Frank. What's the haps?
Ray, got it, my friend. Just kind of get my head around I guess, the world we live in today and stuff that's happening yesterday at Buffalo, New York, grocery store
Yeah,
thing kind of been on my mind. It's just, and it's interesting, Jaime. The part of it that probably concerns me the most, why an 18-year-old kid would just throw his life away. I mean, this
yeah,
kid, no matter, I mean, this kid's life is gone. I mean, he's his age may keep him from getting the death penalty. Whether I don't know whether New York still has the death penalty, but he's definitely would never see outside of a prison again in his life.
yeah.
I can't see it. It's sad, man, and I might be a little selfish and greedy. I kind of wish everybody be like you and I, brother.
There we go.
But hey, we know that's not possible, so we just do our little piece and keep on shining our light.
Huh?
And hopefully that somebody somewhere might want to see something in us that they may want to imitate in their life. So
Right.
what can I say?
It's funny. Start out with the big trauma from yesterday, because I've been talking a lot with other people about, and I think we talk about it, work on yourself, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as Joseph Campbell, the famous philosopher, studier of religion as a myth that holds our reality together, said, he said, the world's messed up. The world's always been messed up. Your job is you.
Amen.
And so here we are again. And we always do think, oh, the world's more messed up than it's ever been. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if we focus so much on the external, we don't ever work on the internal. But
You know, it's Jaime. Religion has always been a thread or a road or avenue, or it's been a part of our life, of our conversations.
right.
And even yesterday, I was watching a special Madeline had. I'm not sure when it's originally broadcast, but she had taped it about the way China is treating its people now. I mean, whole apartment complexes are on lockdown, no food. I mean, and uh,
Right.
one person in your building get COVID, everybody in the building is put on lockdown.
Yeah.
In theory, that sounds probably not a bad thing to do. But I would want to be one of those people that did not have COVID, being placed on lockdown and being locked in my home, no food, and it just. I don't think the world's any more dangerous today than it has been before. Um, it seems like it is, but again, as you were saying, I think the whole or part. I think the whole. When change in and of itself, it gives each and every one of us individually.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do my part. I had a man, kind of a neighbor, as a kind of a neighbor lives a little distance from me, probably more than a half mile, quarter to a half mile from me, and we've known each other over the years. And he cuts my grass for me, and we've kind of just for the while we've known each other, like any other relationship, the more you see people, you have conversations, you get to know, various aspects of each other. And he came by yesterday. It was really rare because he's a school teacher by profession, and this little lawn grass cutting thing, his little side job that he does, and uh, he has his mother lives 3.5 hours away from us in Morgantown, West Virginia, where the University of West Virginia is. His mother lives there, and he has a sister that lives a half hour from the mom. But he literally has to go from here 3.5 hours to cut his mom's lawn and so forth and so on. That's yesterday was really the day he would have went to his mom's house, and usually he gets to my home on an evening after he's finished, be it school or anything else. But he can't. So he decided not to go to his mom's, and he came to my house yesterday. We built a raised garden. It was just 4 foot by 10 foot, and 32 inches, well, 30 inches deep. But but we spent the day together yesterday doing that, which is the first time we've ever had an opportunity to sit down and to just work together, be neighborly, be friendly, you know. And it's an interesting, very therapeutic time. My back, I have arthritis now, all of my back and my joints and stuff. So it's really hard for me to do anything. And he allowed me and to do certain things, but and I say allowed because he could tell the pain or the discomfort I was having trying to do stuff, and he was committed to completing his job, and it's really interesting sitting there the way back in the early days doing settlers or religious groups, Mormons or the Amish, they would help one another, and this was, I mean, that was, I mean, though it cuts my grass, that was a no charge day. That was a day, the bonding day, whether it wasn't initially, excuse me, I guess labeled as such, but it ended up being that, and it was just really good. And at the end of it, because I had gone in the house and doing the interim, the situation in Boston had happened, and I came back and I shared it with him. I knew he hadn't heard about it. And we're standing there realizing, just for sake of conversation, he's a Caucasian guy. And here in West Virginia, and he referenced, just to pull out of my development, and there's a neighbor who has a big sign out there, F Biden. I don't care. That's America. He can put anything out there he wanted to put out there. Right. But when if he were to bring his dislike for Biden on my property, then it becomes my problem.
Yeah.
And I try not to internalize that stuff. I mean, even with the Boston thing, like I said, the families, all the people within the supermarket and Tops, today they're grieving the loss of their loved one.
Yeah.
That 18-year-old, if he's 18 years old, someone, we like to think someone somewhere loves him too. And so now he's ruined his life, and he's put all those other people, mother, father, sister, brother, aunts, uncles, next door neighbors, in the limelight. So it's just, and it's sad, Jaime, but I tell you, again, like I said earlier, I just pray that these broadcasts that we're doing, our relationship, even if it's not here, be it when you in this end of the country or I'm on that end, people see the two of us hanging out, and people who know us from the past and see that we're still friends. I'm hoping but for 1 minute it stops and makes them kind of say, "Hey, man, cool. They're still buddies. They're still friends. They still have a mutual respect for one another." So if we do that, man, and we do this for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever, and you know, and we only encourage one other person. I would love to. We all would love to encourage thousands and millions, but one person. I mean, there's I think it's African proverbs. Each one teach one.
Right.
And even with Christianity, Hama, if Christians have discipled their students like I understand the gospel to be, then the world would be different, have a different perspective. People wouldn't just take people's lives. It can always be different religions, you know, but the real religions, be it even Muslim as opposed to Christianity or Buddhism, at the base of all these religions, most religions, is love and respect.
Mm-hmm.
And man, so I love you, man. So again, I'm kind of rampant, man, because it's just one of those things. You know, like I said, I've got a conversation going in my head 24/7. Whether it's legitimate or whether it's just like running. Wow. I pray that it's legitimate, because I know my heart and my desire is to be at peace with all men.
Yep.
Everywhere. Yeah. Did you have a chance to look up Sam Brown?
Yeah, I couldn't find anything besides his little political blurb. So and then I ran out of time. But what we were going to talk about was ignorance versus education. And so I went to my
ignorance
graduation.
Versus intelligence, not education, because there's ignorant and educated people. So ignorance against intelligence.
But intelligence has nothing to do with how ignorant or educated you are.
Well, but let's no, and we know. Guess what? You put educated, and we're not talking about education. It was about intelligence versus ignorance. So
No, but intelligence is a measurement of aptitude. Education is how much do you know. Ignorance is how much do you not, how little do you know.
okay. So the quote, so we got to keep it to, I mean, well, I want to keep it to the quote that I was sharing that really kind of, I guess, really kind of juiced me was that there's a war in this world. There's intelligence against ignorance, and ignorance is winning. And
but see, so whoever made that quote is ignorant because they don't even know what the words mean. But I thought we were going to talk about having too much information in your head and having it cause issues versus how much is good information. And I was thinking about, you know, the George Bush and Al Gore story, and then went to my college graduation finally 2 years late yesterday. And this guy, he works for NASA now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about his life. His parents are from Espanola, New Mexico. He was picked on and bullied.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really attend high school, scraped along, ended up coming back to college in his late 20s, and ended up working at NASA after he got his master's degree from Purdue University. The thing that made me think of this thing is he's like, I've never read a whole book. And he's got his master's degree, and he's working with top scientists working on growing stuff in space and on the moon. And that was what I was thinking about, was that idea of if you focus on the real, and this is a thing I've always had too. So when you brought it up this week, I was like, oh yeah, if your heart is in the right place, you're more likely to have a life that we call successful. Now, there's also just hard work and chicanery, right? Like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and all these guys, they're smart. They have a lot of information. They're driven, and then they become what you could call successful. And I don't. I mean, it just doesn't look like they're doing as much good in the world as they could. So that's a whole nother thing. So what is care what what is your definition of ignorance then, or intelligence on this scale? Because that's mine is and Sparky and I talk us all the time that knowing a lot of words in a lot of concepts and being really good at math to Sparky isn't intelligence. And I'm like, but it is. It's one way of being intelligent. There's lots of ways of being intelligent. So that's different though from using it. And what is somebody refusing to take it? So what do you think of those ideas?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I guess right now is in probably you and I are a good example in my head as to my understanding of the difference between a well-read person or a person who's done a lot of reading and a person who hasn't done a lot of reason and reading. And I guess I'm not, I guess literate enough to know that I'm not an intelligent person. But I can relate to the areas in my life that that is grounded in institutional education, and I see the benefits in it.
Right.
And I also see the benefits in Madeline comes to mind. Madeline talks about my wife, because she has her master's degree and so forth and so on, and she talks about people who have book learning, and then there's people who have CS, common sense.
What?
CS, common sense. And because we all know a lot of educated people who, for lack of anything, are still lost, shall I say.
Right.
I don't think education in and of itself gives you um, uh, the focus or the balance that one needs to be um, an enlightened person, shall I say. You know, it's like information. I can sit down with, like, we were building the planner yesterday. We had our 2 by 10 footers and a 2 by 4 4 footers. I mean, when he told me what we're gonna do, I mean, I basically was able. I had 3 cuts. I mean, 3 cuts. I had 3 2 by 10 8 footers,
Right.
and so I only had 3 to cut those in half, and each one of them gave me 4 feet. I didn't have to take out a paper and pencil, and I mean, it was like, that was simple. That, to me, that was like elementary math.
Right.
Of course, that same math I did, that I'm sure your friend can use the same math there, working on space, but degrees and stuff, the basic education, the basic intelligence that I think we all need. As I said, I think we all need. And we build on that. And once that is like, that's the foundation. And I hear what you're saying, Hami. And except because of the level of understanding and where our understanding has come from, you and I have a different set of understanding of understanding. You know what I'm saying? Which it doesn't make either one of them wrong, and it doesn't make one any more clear than the other to me.
Right.
I would think someone much like yourself who has read a lot more, so you have a lot more adjectives and to add to your understanding, where I would lack that because I have not read as much as you.
Right.
But the thing that I like about the way you and I communicate, even when we get to a place in our conversation and conveying our understanding, when one, especially me, most of the time it's me, that's lacking the understanding, you have the skills to be able to explain to me, to make it clear enough to me your point. And so I like that. I would like, in this world, Hami, whether it's the butcher or the baker or the
Candlestick maker.
the elected official or the professor at the college, if our paths cross, we should be able enough to still be able to convey, lack of any other way, salutations. I mean, we still should be able to do that. And there are people in this world, because of what their perceived value, discard. And a good example. I'm going to apply what I understand about Vladimir Putin and Ukraine right now. For some reason, this man feels that he has a superior perspective on Ukrainian people, all the people. I mean, a whole country. Here's one single man who feel that he knows what's best for everyone.
Right.
It kind of freaks me out for anyone to take take that authority. And so I maybe getting a little bit off what we talk about with Vladimir Putin, but it fits into, here is
that sense of entitlement, right?
Yes, exactly.
So we have this, and that's what people call intelligence or education or privilege. So we are getting a little off. What's the, because when you said that this week, I thought about it, and this one guy, the keynote speaker at the graduation at Northern Mexico College, talking about if your heart, and then he had his practical rules for success, and one was be kind to people. And then he went on and talked about, and so to me, that's a great piece of wisdom or intelligence, right? He said, if you're having a hard time with somebody at your job, think good thoughts about them. And then Barb and I were talking about that, the grandmother of my kids, how that changed her relationship with people. And then I thought about my stepdad, who can't really read and write, and we're building these walls, and somehow he got connected with this owner of a business called Waste Management, and that guy couldn't read or write at all, and he came up from nothing to own this multi-million-dollar company. And you just think about all the assumptions you have on both sides, and currently there's a big move that being educated is pretentious and elitist and shouldn't happen, and college isn't for everyone. And for me, I'm like, oh, it shouldn't be versus because I'm ignorant in some things, you're ignorant in some things, and we have a lot of education in other things. Is there they need to work together. And then there's a whole book, right, about having too much information paralyzes the human mind. And it's based, I can't find it right now, try to look it up, but it was based on a study around back pain, and people that got more information didn't do as well. So his idea was, you don't need all that information. Sometimes it just floods your brain and you stop thinking. And I did think, a friend of mine with my prostate cancer doing all this research, and it's a bunch of stuff that made her very nervous, right? And I'm like, I don't need that. I'm going to make a decision based on a much smaller database that works for me, and I don't have all this anxiety and paralysis. So that was my direction with that. was was how do you live in this world with either education or not education? And by education, I mean knowing math, knowing science, knowing language, right? And now there's a lot of different theories now of 12 different types of education. I mean, of intelligence, interpersonal, intrapersonal, right? So how do you relate to people? How do you get people to understand you? How do you understand other people? How do you understand yourself? How do you make yourself understood? So those are two different types. And then there's logic. How do you make logical connections in language? And then there's math. And so that's the fascinating thing to me. Where'd it go? The theories of multiple intelligence, which yeah, and how do you practice deferred gratifications? That's self-control. All those are different ways to be intelligent. Does that make sense or no?
Well, I'm like I said, when I heard that statement, being one of the smartest people I know, or one of the most read people that I know, you and our relationship, I thought of you
Right.
first. And even you now talking about the various levels of intelligence, that doesn't surprise me that theory is out there, or
Right.
that is recognized. I've never heard that. It makes sense because nothing is just one-dimensional, should I
Right.
say? And there's multiple aspects to every, and I think when we apply that, even just to think about that in and of itself dictates there is a certain level of intelligence for anyone who basically blindly locks into one theory.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that in a strange kind of way, the young man, the 18-year-old guy, got caught up in one theory, and it sounded like he was based on some type of, I forget exactly what they call it, have a name for it, because it's supposedly what his post that he had was talking about it, basically, if I understood it right, about the devaluation of the white man in America. Hey, if we look at history, I mean, well, that in and of itself, what does that mean? I mean, people are still gonna be people. The American Indian, even with all the rape and murder and robbing of land and relocating of the American Indian, they still exist. I think of the Jewish people who got kicked out of Palestine and dispersed all over the world are now back, that's a whole nother story. They're now back in Jerusalem.
Right.
So I believe that everything, be it white people, be it black people, be it yellow people, Asian, whoever, they're going to continue to exist in some form.
Right.
And if nothing other than in our DNA, I'd be willing to bet that if the 18-year-old guy who hated Jews and hate black folk, if they were to do his blood in his DNA, he's got some African blood in him. I mean, from what I
Right.
understand with the DNA
Yep.
testing, everybody's got some African DNA in them. And so we're all human beings. And when we get to that place, Hami, whether, like I said, the butcher or the baker or the candlestick maker or the elected official or
Right.
the professor at the college, we're still going to respect people. And the respect begins with ourselves. And that point, that eliminates ignorance. And so when me with ignorance, ignorance is when one feel as though that their way of thinking, no matter what kind of degrees they have, is the only possibility in all the world. You and I basically have some difference in religion.
Right.
But neither one of us are willing to discount the basic theory or philosophy of spirituality. And that's what religion kind of comes out of it, that need. And you and I both know we need that, whether it's through meditation, prayer, or an organized religion. And that it grieves me when someone does not have a sense of a higher power or a governing power higher than ourselves, an intelligence, and I look forward to that intelligence as I talk about myself being a child of the universe, and I think of I consider myself cosmic dust, and I believe I've always existed, I always will exist, and that's, I mean, I say that, and I would say that to anyone, but I know that basically the Christian world does not view that simply, although they do, but they won't admit it in the context that I'm admitting it, because they do believe in life after death. So they do believe another world, but I believe the world, it just changes, like planting building our planter yesterday. We're going to put compost in, and compost is a product of several other things. And I mean, even the trees and bark and stuff, it tends to start a new cycle. It's an end of one cycle, it goes into another cycle.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing, honey. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I am, man. I like believing in myself. I said something right then that I wasn't planning on saying, but I like the way it came out. I believe in myself.
Yeah.
And that belief that I have in myself has taken me Santa Fe, it's taken me around the world. I don't carry guns. Last year, this time when I was coming out to Santa Fe and my truck caught on fire, and when the sheriff came out there, police, state police, whoever came, one of the first things said, "Do you have any guns or weapons in your vehicle?" Because the truck's on fire. They were thinking about some bullets flying. No, I don't have any. Right. And I didn't think about it until after the thought. But the average person traveling across countries probably got some form of defense. I don't have it. I don't need it. I don't feel a need for it.
Yeah.
So I kind of like depending on my being in tune, my being alert. The Marine Corps has a saying: observe everything that takes place in sight and hearing. And I've developed that. I mean, I go into places and instinctively, I'm assessing what's going on around with the people there, what's going on. And so I do that as part of my existence, my survival. And I think when we learn to develop that individual talents that we have, you have, I have, then we find out the difference in our talents is like the grain of sand I talk about, is the thing that makes us unique. And yet we're still human beings on this planet doing the same thing, we are surviving.
Yeah.
By whatever means, we're surviving, be it food, shelter, clothing. The basic survival instincts are in all of us. Even the guy on the street, he's out there panhandling for some money to get, whether it's drugs, cigarettes, or food. Very rarely you see anyone out there with a sign for a place to live, a roof over the head.
Yeah, yeah.
So food is a basic thing that we all, and the shelter, it comes out, I guess the homeless person
Right.
is starting. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, even though my homelessness, as brief as it was, I can't
Yeah.
really, I've never been able to embrace that mindset. So I've never had to.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
ignorance versus intelligence, I believe it's sad that all of us, or some people, for whatever reason, get sidetracked, get lost, and lose that sense of value. Um, uh, I was also on Facebook the other day. A father with Alzheimer's raised his son, single parent, to become a doctor. Wow.
Right.
Kid has Alzheimer's. I'm not Alzheimer's. He has what's it called? Down syndrome, but Alzheimer's. The father had Down syndrome, and he raised his son, and his son's now a doctor. Man, it's like,
Right.
I mean, how much? I mean, I was proud of him. He and his son, and he raised him as a single parent. So that, I think intelligence, whether it's in a Down syndrome person, which I know there are, and there are down. I mean, probably, as I said, I was thinking about Dustin Hoffman's movie Rain Man.
Right.
I mean, Raymond was like brilliant.
Right.
In his own way. I mean, his mind had compensated for whatever he didn't have, like you and I or the average person, but it was still developing. It still grew.
Yeah.
And man, I joke and I say it, but at the same time, I mean, I'm smarter today than I ever been. It's like and it's not, I guess when I look at my life, I realized I didn't get to be 74 years of age because I was out there standing in the middle of a train track, waiting to see if I could stop a train like Superman. I was smart enough to know that I couldn't do that.
Right.
And at the same time, I was smart enough to know that when you cross a train track, you go across it, and keep moving. And that's where my life has been. I've been continuously on the move. And now I find myself at a place, and thank you for that. When you said to me, I've been moving that way for 10 years, that opened a whole new line of thought to me. And I came back home, and I'm at home. I'm at home.
Yeah.
My home is my home. I mean, this is where I'm supposed to be. Hold on. I'm going to answer this while you're on the phone.
All right.
Yes, sir, Adam.
Yes, sir. I called you and thought about calling you back in 10 minutes because I got the kids down here and things. I got to go downstairs to the bathroom. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm literally on the computer right now with Jaime out there in Santa Fe. Say hi to him.
Good morning.
Hello. How you doing?
Yeah, he's on the computer. We've been doing. I think I told you we've been doing these broadcasts every Sunday morning. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Oh, sorry.
But no, it's cool. That's good. I mean, you get a chance. You and he hadn't had a chance to share greetings in a while. So if you guys up to the kids get finished, probably about a half hour, call me back, please.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, son. Love you, man.
Have a good one.
Bye now.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jaime, that he would call today. Adam has his world. He's kind of, I mean, I'm a dad again. I've lived a little longer than him, twice as long as a matter of fact.
Right.
And but we still have this great relationship. And even recently, he was talking to someone, and he kind of mentioned his relationship with his dad and this woman. He said, "Oh, you and your dad have a good relationship?" He said, "Oh yeah, we've always had." And that may not be as rare in your community as in the African-American community, for a whole lot of reasons. We don't need to go into all of them.
Right.
But Adam and I, because I mean, everyone who knows me, well, first of all, they know my relationship with my son. They know my relationship with my wife. They know my relationship with God and my religion. Those are the things that basically I always try to make sure define who I am. If I'm allowed to define. When I was part of an organization called IBI, Income Builders International, we used to do a little therapy, and used to sit across from each other like you and I right now, although we're on a computer here.
Right.
And we look at each other's eyes and say, "Who are you?" And because most of us say, "Well, I'm a man, and I'm a West Virginian," or but when we really stop and think, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Who are you? I mean, separate apart from being a man, let's strip the gender off of it. Who are you at your core?
Yeah.
That's something that I would encourage anyone who hears this, and I especially me. I mean, even myself, I have
Right.
to stay focused on who I am because that's my job.
Right.
And most of us, I believe, most human beings spend their entire life and never really get to know who they are. They're defined by their education, by the community they live in, by their resources,
Right.
everything other than what's inside of them, what's at the core of you. You know,
Right.
my core and your core would stop and help a complete stranger.
Yeah.
And there are people we've seen on Facebook where people get hit by cars in certain communities and people just ride by and ride over the person laying in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
Because that's not them. It doesn't affect them directly, but they don't realize. I mean, I realize if you see someone stranded in the middle of the street, if nothing else to stop but to ride over top of them, disrespect and disregard, back to Vladimir Putin, another human being's right. That even goes back to my theory on this abortion stuff right now.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, it's already a law. Why you can't unring the bell?
Yeah.
It's so society has been able to accept it, and the bottom line to abortion, it's a woman's right. That's her body. That's, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
she should take a little more responsibility, maybe possibly, but in spite of that, I mean, even when men use condoms, I've heard of condoms bursting, so women can get pregnant that way. So,
Yeah.
so it's just we have to respect each other's rights, and like I said, being a neighbor who was really outside of my development has a flag about F. Biden. He has a right to do that. He's on his property,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have a right to come on my property and
Right.
try to influence me or impede me from my movement because he wants me to embrace what he's embraced, or he's got some agenda going on that he wants to challenge me, like the guy going in the supermarket went on. I mean, those 10 people he killed, man, and the 3 that's injured, and all the people. I mean, that's 13, 14 people right there.
Yeah.
But there are literally probably hundreds of people, and I mean, throughout in his own in that circle that
Yep.
he has affected.
Yep.
Because his own little distorted view on another person's right and his ignorance on where he sees himself in the evolution of our society.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty deep. Yeah, that's pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, I was like, oh, you and I try to do the opposite of spread some kindness and lovingness, and hopefully that'll spread. So it's an interesting issue. Although, when you look at it historically, that's all we've worshipped, right? How did you make a fortune in Europe since 3,000 years ago? You went off to war and stole things, including women who were property, from other men. And so it's not a new thing. It's not, how do you get famous, right? Who do we remember from Greece? We remember Achilles and Odysseus. We don't really remember the thinkers. And so, or the women, So to me, that's a whole other subject. Our society rewards greed and violence, and then it freaks out because there needs to be some order. So these guys that build these huge financial empires through being better at fraud and stealing and gathering than others, they're okay. And it's like, well, and we were talking about that, so we always do this, jump around.
Yeah.
I really am trying to think about this idea that one person sequestering a bunch of wealth causes poverty. And I don't know if it's true. And I was talking to a kid yesterday, and they did have an idea that, yes, the way we gather wealth in these Western cultures does necessitate poverty. And that's an interesting issue, because the idea behind, in America, it's the Libertarian Party, is if one person gets wealthy, that makes other people more wealthy. And then the other idea is that if you gather all this wealth to yourself, you're taking it away from other people by no matter what your intentions are, you're making other people poor. So that's a very interesting conundrum around what violence do we think is okay and what violence do we not think is okay. And there's this guy, Jordan Peterson, he's like, well, enforced monogamy decreases violence among men. And it's like, where do you get that from? That's not true. He's just said that as if it was a fact, and I don't know that it's a fact. And then his thing discounts all the domestic violence.
How are you going to measure it anyway? I mean, how are you going to? I mean, again, at this point, I'm not intelligent enough to see how are you going to monitor that. How are you going to even study that theory? I mean, it's got to be something in your head. That's because that's the only place it exists. I would say.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, right? Because we have less enforced monogamy in the U.S. right now than pretty much than historically. And we don't really know that because a lot of cultures have mistresses and boyfriends and all that, which is okay. So yeah, you don't even, how do you measure monogamy, right? Because he's saying, well, if two people are married, then they're monogamous. And you're like, well, that's not true. That's not on paper, right? And so anyways, all that complexity. And then this guy draws all these conclusions from a, and this is right. So here's a very educated person. By all accounts, he's very smart. And then he's drawing these incorrect conclusions. And you're like, well, so is he ignorant, or is he educated, or is he intelligent, or is he stupid? And you're like, well, he's all of them, right? He's super intelligent, he's super ignorant. I mean, stupid, he's super ignorant, and he's super educated. And maybe all of us are, but the way, yeah, so very interesting. And like you said, right, coming from the outside with wisdom, you're like, well, how would you even measure that? How are you going to measure
it's definitely not a question on the sensors to be able to get that you can compile some data on it if that's not there. It's not
are you violent?
It's
well, okay, so here's, I want to say again before you go, is so this group mindset doesn't think of war as violence and doesn't think of domestic violence as violence. So then they're right. There's a lot less violence in the way they want the world to be, as long as you discount those two things. And now, when you go have a protest for civil rights and somebody burns a Korean grocery store, that's violence. But going to the whole world being at war doesn't count in their minds, right? It's very, to me, crazy. But anyways, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of got lost there. I mean, it's you know, there's this whole thing of intelligence versus ignorance. I believe that it's something that we all need to think about it, especially in with the statement that was stated and that kind of piqued my interest in it, that this war between intelligence and ignorance is in the world, and ignorance is winning. You tend to see what I consider ignorance. Again, the 18-year-old guy yesterday. That was an ignorant thing to do.
Yeah.
And I fail to believe anyone would debate it as any other behavior. It was an ignorant behavior to have done. But I would think if someone would also, like me, see that as being somewhat ignorant, I would think that probably it's a 50-50 people talking about Vladimir Putin going into Ukraine as being ignorant. I think that's ignorant. Here's a sovereign country that had not ever had me they had gave no indication whatsoever that they were going to cause any threat to Russia.
Right.
We're willing to do trade with you. We trade, we buy your product, you buy our product,
Right.
And cool, you do your thing, I do ours. But
Right.
and now, and you look at the devastation that's being done then, and again, like I said, in Vladimir Putin's ignorance in Ukraine, the devastation is being done. It'll take, I mean, even with all the modern technology, if we import labor from all over the world, it takes years to rebuild that country.
Yep. Yep.
And they were a nice, peaceful country. I mean,
Right.
and this means more to me because of my travel. Ukraine was one of the places that I had traveled. I mean, just recently,
Yeah.
with 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and I found it be. I mean, I found it being as peaceful. There's the element. It was almost like being in America,
Yeah.
and I could see while I was there the difference in the people, the older people who grew up under communism, and the
Yeah.
younger people who
Right.
really appreciated having access to the internet
Yep.
and travel, education. I mean, I had a conversation about talk at one of the high schools, and these young people talk about going off to Oxford and so forth. And then,
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, kids. I mean, it's like, I was just feeling impressed. It's so. I think we really need to do everything that we can to enlighten our fellow citizens
Right.
about their value in their contribution in the elevation or the escalation or the growth or the future of human beings. We all can contribute to that.
Right.
Now, I
Yeah.
mean, it would be great if some one person within their lifetime would have as much impact on the consciousness or of society as perhaps some of these billionaires
Right.
do. I mean, it's mind blowing to take people like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and
Huh?
all the billionaires. These
Right.
are young people. They're younger than you and I,
Yep. Yep.
and they're in a position to influence a lot of the consciousness of society. They're in a
Right.
position.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and my prayer is that they do that. They really
Yeah.
become, they see their responsibility to their fellow human beings, not to the fellow American, but the fellow human beings. And we do
Right.
see that. We see that, Hobby, because a lot of these countries, be it China, be it Russia, be it North Korea, or wherever,
Yeah.
these people through the spread of computers, cell phones, the intelligence community, they are becoming wiser, and they see the advantages of being able to make their own decisions,
Right.
not have a government dictate to them, or on lockdown like China or North Korea, which like totally freaks me out. But then it brings me back to where we are here in America.
Yeah.
It grieves me to a certain extent because of some of the ignorance in America. The average American doesn't know how blessed we are. You got people coming across the desert with out in the water to get into America. They're not. 9 out of 10 of those people that are trying to cross the border, be it from Ukraine or wherever they're coming from, they're not
Right.
coming here to overthrow the government.
No.
They're coming for freedom.
Right.
The ability to
For opportunity to eat and have shelter and
yeah,
not live in that constant fear. You know, it's funny when you say it because I'm like, yeah, and we have these groups of people trying to make us constantly afraid of this or that.
Yeah.
Right. Be afraid of the immigrant, be afraid of the brown people, be afraid of the government, be afraid of the white people. And then when you get afraid, to me, you do become ignorant and stupid because it separates the frontal lobe from the rest of you. And it's funny because you can be very, very smart and cunning while being scared, but the long-term thinking doesn't happen and the love for other humans doesn't happen. And so it's like very interesting that we have almost a unconscious plot to separate ourselves from feeling, caring, and loving and we have all this fear going on, and then you act out in ways that create a horrible situation where you're injured morally, financially, or physically. And then you're like, see, I should have been afraid. And then you make more fear. Then you make more violence and more lack of food. Like inflation is just a thing because people are scared, but it's real. People will start starving because of the fear, which created inflation. And I'm always trying to talk to people about what good is being upset and afraid doing. Well, I'm like, yeah, okay. Are you going to go to the Ukraine? Did you write your senator and say, hey, we need to support the Ukraine? Then and it's very unpopular, and they're always, it's not human to not care. I'm like, well, I got my kids, I got my sister, I got to make a living, I got 2 or 3 people that depend on me to bring money in for housing. If I start thinking about even the fires in New Mexico all day, then I'm paralyzed and I don't do the things to take care of these 4 or 5 people in my immediate vicinity who need me, including myself. And so it's a very interesting thing to try to talk about with people, of saying, yeah, you're making yourself dysfunctional over something you can't do anything about. And if you are anxious about the fires, and people are doing it, like a friend of mine, she was all anxious, and so she went and bought a bunch of fruit and water and drove up to the staging place and helped firefighters, what do you call it, volunteers, and displaced people. And I'm like, yeah, there you go. And she had the resources, right? She didn't have to work every day. But to me, that was super powerful compared to
absolutely
the rest of the people who are just going around upset and then mad, right? And and I'm doing therapy now. I got my license and all that, and people are, well, who am I without my depression or anxiety? So I'm not going to stop being depressed or anxious. And I don't know, really, asking my supervisors and literature and everything, how do you help somebody step out of that? Because it's not actually helping to be, whether you're scared of something that's real, like these fires, or the destabilization of the world economy through COVID or Ukraine. If you're all upset, you just you make it worse, I think. So what do you think?
Well, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna get back there 1 second. You brought up Barb, your former mother-in-law, several occasions, and I've never sent her a greeting. Please tell her I said hi. I mean, I
will.
She's like really cool lady. She helped us a lot, and
right.
tell her I say hi, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. My belief has brought me back to the most. Everything comes back to me at this point. My intellect, my knowing has brought me back to a place, the only place that I can really can where I need to start being the best person is me.
Yeah.
And I love your friend. Take I can sit here and complain about Putin and all these people all day long, which I don't do. And we just basically but I'm like you, if I'm really upset with it, then do something. Right. If nothing else, then contact you, as you say, your elected official, tell them that you support it, you encourage them to support it. But to sit back, and most people spend their whole entire life sitting on the sideline, sitting in their pubs and in the plaza, at the coffee shop, talking about this, that, and the other, and applying no energy, putting no energy, even to pray. Probably the simplest thing we all have, the most powerful resource we have, is prayer and meditation. Yeah. And in that place, we can change our personal world. Right. Which, if we change, then with the people around us, our environment, the people that come into our world change. Right. So, I think it all begins and ends with us as individuals. I mean, and I love the way, again, I sit here at 74. And I'm so proud of being where I am, because when I look back and I see all the little side roads that I went down where I could have got stuck instead of
Right.
turning around, coming back up out of,
Yeah.
and still continue to move, not just settling for. I mean, great people come in my mind that has been in and out of my life, and to be where I am now in the home that I am, and not just a physical home. What makes my home home, first of all, is my mate,
Yep.
who's like my best friend in the entire world.
Yeah.
And so we share this home together. So
Yep.
that's what makes the home.
Yep.
And God forbid, national disaster or act of God, that this building does not disappear the next day or two through fire or through like the national disaster.
Right.
My mate and we will still be okay,
Yeah.
because and God forbid we were to lose one or the other. I've gotten to a place now, my friend, and I that I really have a peace that I've never ever
Wow.
have known.
Yeah.
And even in theory, I mean, because I'm feeling it now, I'm living it. And it's a great place to be. And I think we all need, I know part of this journey getting to this place, when they did the movie by Muhammad Ali and George Benson did the piece, The Greatest Love of All, Learn to Love Oneself.
Mhm.
Whitney Houston did a version of, several people did a version of it.
Right.
But when you think about it, when you learn to love yourself, then all that other stuff, our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, all this stuff, it takes a different perspective. We look at, but
Yeah.
we're looking at it with different eyes now. We now,
Yeah.
whereas there were times, I think I was telling you, I was looking at one of the what do they call it? Personality about people, and I looked at myself and I Googled myself, and looking at my criminal record freaked me out. That I think it was 4 times that I was charged with assault in my lifetime.
Wow.
Now, all of them, thank God, were after I came back from Vietnam. So I attached my war service to that. Thank
Right.
God, never land me in jail. But when I look at it, I learned something from it, because I that could have been a way of life, and it's real easy to go through life being angered and being upset because I don't have the education, because I'm
Right.
Black, because
Right.
my parents didn't do this, or my family did this or that. But the bottom line, it's my life.
Yeah.
It's my life. So Frank, what are you doing about your life? And or what have you done about your life to get to where you are? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I've done this. And again, our new great saying, when I got up in the morning, do something. You wake up, get up, do something.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, you can lay in bed all
Yeah.
day long if you want to. You can lay in bed looking for a job.
Yeah.
And you can lay in bed at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you decide to get up at 12 o'clock looking for the job. The job that you could have possibly had, someone got that at 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so if it's truly a job that we want, then go get one.
Yeah.
I mean, if an education is what you want, go get it. If it's a new experience, I mean, I've just been this soul that loved the world. I mean, I never knew this. I mean, I've never been one to become institutionalized in any way, shape, or form. I don't think I can be. I guess if I was forced to be, but even in that situation, if some reason I was to be landed in North Korea or wherever, I'm kind of like the theory in Shawshank, which is one of my favorite movies, and was it Crow who was in it, and he says that, man, you can be behind these walls, but you can take your mind outside of, basically saying you can be physically here, but you don't have to be mentally here. So the path that we have to be enlightened or to be in tune, it lies between our ears. And we have, although the basic brain is kind of built the same way with all of us, certain areas develop faster or better, and based on, in some cases, because of health injuries and or what you feed into it.
Right.
So we had that choice. And of all the creations, all that I know that exists, I think I brought this point out the other day. In all the universe, the human being is the only creature that I know that has freedom of choice, and it's pretty cool.
Right.
Whether we're the only
Yeah.
one, I'm just happy that I have it, so I can
What's it?
sincerely
Yeah.
say everything. And I look back over my life, I see a lot of places, I mean, that I wish weren't there, but they are there. Thank God I didn't become a victim of it. I can learn from it even at this point.
Yeah.
15, 20, 30, 40 years later, I can still learn from that episode in my life. Thank
Right,
God it
right.
didn't become a part of my life.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
there, I experienced it, and I moved on. And I'm
Yeah,
a better
yeah.
man today because of it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I answered the question. I
What are we
I
talking
get to rattle on
We're
it.
talking about if you can back to intellect and education and listening to lots of different people. Joseph Campbell, right?
Yes.
World's messed up. It's always been messed up. Your job is you. And maybe we should wrap up on that.
Works for me, my friend.
All right. We'll see you next week. And it's cool because we had this idea of what we're going to talk about, and it came up, but that wasn't what was going on for us today.
Yeah, it's just what I mean. I think, honey, in that part is ending here. I want to encourage you and I to always stay in the moment.
Right.
It's I think of Ram Dass when he wrote "Think Be Here Now,"
Right.
and when you think about that, the only place that exists is here, this moment. I
Right.
mean, we think about what we did yesterday and what we want to do tomorrow or later on this evening. None of that is relevant in this moment, other than our wishful thinking. If we stay in tune to the moment, we will have our experience, the changing of the color. Like we all post pictures of sunrise and landscapes. Man, and you said on your porch, and I said on my porch, and all the woes and worries of the outside world are gone, and we're focused on being in that moment. So I'll end with Ram Dass's "Be Here Now." Be here now.
All right.
Love you, brother.
Love you too.
Take care. Have a good day, my man.
You too.